Ready?
Oh, shit.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to Historia.
Yes, welcome. I'm Kylie.
I'm Jamie.
And today we have a very exciting topic. I don't know what it is.
I don't think we may have covered someone similar in a sense.
Oh, a human.
Yeah, I'm covering a person today.
Modern day.
No.
Like old, or like old?
Not like old, not ancient. But
Okay, because
yeah.
usually you go for the ancient. So.
I do. Ancient history is my forte. I like it better than modern.
I know, that's why we work well together.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. This is our 4th episode of the night.
Yep.
Out of 5, so we're doing great.
Yeah, and then we'll go get dinner.
Yeah, it's like our monthly tradition.
Yay. Hopefully it won't be as busy, but then again, Bubba's is always busy.
Yeah, but we always get in right away.
That's true.
So now you know. All right. What are we doing today?
All right. So the person we are going to be discussing has quite the legend behind him. Ooh.
Him.
Yes. He has been called a good man, a bad man, and even a Robin Hood figure type. I wouldn't go that far, though.
Oh.
No.
This could be anyone.
Literally. So behind this facade that many see him as, it comes down to this historical figure being both known as a pirate and a patriot.
The fuck?
Today, we are talking about Jean Lafitte.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard his name, but I don't know who he is.
Yeah, I didn't know either. He's really big in the South.
But I've heard Lafitte. Like, I've definitely heard his
Lafitte.
name.
Yeah.
I didn't know he's a pirate. I would have never guessed that.
I mean, kind of, yes, no, maybe. It's a whole thing.
All right. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah. So before we get into this week's episode, let's go over where I got all my research. This one, I had to dive into several different websites and information to try and get his story as clear as possible. Lafitte is a well-respected figure in the South, so my apologies if I don't have the endless knowledge about him.
Come on, Jamie. No, just kidding.
I didn't know who he was until I watched an episode of Expedition Unknown.
I was going to say, how'd you find this out? Instagram?
No.
Expedition Unknown.
Josh Gates.
Of course. Her love.
My love. I love him. He's great.
He's Gate. Get it? His last name, Gates.
Yes.
Okay. Glad. All right. Well,
we're getting slap happy.
yeah, with that being said, let's just get on in.
So anyway, I got information on him from TexasHighway.com, the National Park Service website, actually.
Okay.
The Acadian Historical website, and tshaonline.org and battlefields.org. So quite a few. There was, the history on him was so sporadic between all of these because some focused on one part of him while the other focused on like another part of him. So it was just it kept going back and forth. And some of it's very vague because there's a lot of mystery behind this man, but also a lot of spotlight on him during his peak. So it was like he's mysterious, but also popular. How does that happen? What ifs? So now I am talking primarily about Jean Lafitte, but his brother Pierre is just as important in the story as him, as he was also a leader of their business of smuggling and privateering.
If your name is Pierre, you have to be like a fascinating person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't be boring.
Oh, they are very interesting people. But yeah, so Pierre, he also has very high significance, but of course most people only know as Jean.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I say Lafitte, I'm talking primarily about Jean and not Pierre. I call Pierre by his first name.
Oh, of course. Yeah. First name basis.
I love saying Pierre.
I know. It's such a fun name.
It is. So from the research I gathered, Jean was born sometime between 1781 to 1780 to 1781 in either France or in Saint-Domingue, which is also known as Haiti now.
Oh.
Yeah, it's all over the place. There's no definitive I guess, historical records
Right.
of his birth. So I found that his family lived at one point in Hispaniola, but his younger years are very sparse in knowing anything. Like, we don't know anything of his upbringing.
Okay.
It's just, they just appeared. It was poof. It is possible that Jean and Pierre arrived in New Orleans in 1804, and their presence in the area would start to form in the next few years. So they kind of just showed up and started making a name for themselves.
As they should.
Yeah. So they have to be some form of French because of their name.
Yeah.
So, and I think they knew English. I'm assuming they knew English because they're in New Orleans, but French was a heavy population in this area of New Orleans and also in the language at this time, I'm sure, because the French had it taken over at one point.
Aren't there still a lot of like French people that live there?
I don't know. I don't know much about the New Orleans area.
Yeah, me neither.
So, a popular profession in New Orleans or anywhere on the coast on this area, like in the South, was importing and exporting goods during this time. Like, it was huge.
Classic.
It was a good way to make good money throughout the world. A problem, though, would arise in 1807. So, importing and exporting, like, that is like everybody's dream, and that was the main thing for countries to do. Because if you wanted to get like something that other country had, like, you had to trade with them. But in 1807, the Embargo Act would be put in place, and any exports or imports from Great Britain, France, and I think Spain would be enforced. So they cut ties with them. They're like, we are not importing anything. You want to get your freaking croissants? I don't think so. Or I don't know what.
Croissants.
You want some fish and chips? I don't think so.
Is it French fries?
Some French fries.
French.
So, oh my god,
I'm really good with jokes today.
wow. So this was huge because this would become a big problem for those who made a living with the trade system between the countries, especially those called merchants. If you are curious why this Embargo Act was even created, then your American history teacher failed you. Kidding.
Kidding, not
literally. And if you're from like out of the U.S., you probably didn't learn about like
then you're
stuff.
good. You
Yeah,
have not a hall pass. You have a pass.
you Americans.
Yeah, get a life. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so a little history lesson. So Great Britain and the U.S. were in a hissy fit still after the American Revolution, where they cut off ties with Great Britain, and they were not happy about that. And this ended up cutting off the goods between the nations that were becoming full force now. They were getting in a bigger fight after the 1776 Revolutionary War. And it just went downhill from there. But so this kind of put the Lafitte brothers kind of in a pickle because they were pretty new to this business because the War of 1812 was in 1812, but also with the Embargo Act being enforced in 1807 and they had just arrived around 1804, they were only in like the trading system within like 3 years. But they were kind of like put them in a bind of whether they wanted to follow the law or not.
That's a hard choice.
Exactly. They decided on the latter. They're like, fuck you, law. You're making this decision for me. Like, it is your fault that you're making me do this. Because
he's the law.
Yeah, like he didn't want to stop what he was doing. And so he was just like, I'm just going to continue with what I'm doing. I'm going to be sassy about it too.
Of course.
So merchants were quickly starting to struggle in their shops as they no longer had imported goods that they could buy at auctions or to sell to provide to others. Like it just wasn't, they were struggling, especially down by like the docks area.
Yeah.
And also during this time, it became illegal to be importing slaves into the United States. Mm-hmm. Although this is good in our eyes now for the illegality of bringing slaves over to the U.S., plantation owners in the South were finding it hard to find enough slave workers to purchase to work the fields because of it. So, and I mean, a lot of them, they would have like, a lot of their slaves would have kids and then they would raise them to be slaves, but that would take years.
Yeah.
So, and if you treat them too unfairly, they're gonna die.
Right.
Like, they are human beings. Like, you can't just make them seem like they're a freaking pet. Like, they're not pets. They're people. But in this case, so they would just go back, they would just go down to the docks and be like, okay, how many slaves can I purchase today? But with the illegalization of it, they were like, oh shit, what do we do now?
Yeah.
So it's like, haha, in your face. This was only the beginning, but you know, it's something. So with everyone desperate to obtain not only imported goods and slaves, the Lafitte brothers took notice of this. So, or exported goods. And decided to do something about it that would make them quite wealthy in the long run. So Jean and Pierre would come up with a plan that they would provide those merchants and slave owners with the goods that they craved. They're like, hey, we'll get this for you. Don't you worry. So Lafitte would sail with his men to the West Indies, and in their visit, they would purchase slaves for an inexpensive price, then sail back to sell them in New Orleans for an even higher price. This is where we see the bad man side. But of course, like with his legend, this wasn't really a thing that people bring up. Like when they think of Lafitte, they're like, oh, he was a pirate. He went onto these Spanish ships and took their goods and they brought it back. But they completely forget about the slave trading that he did too.
We just want the drama. We don't want that.
Exactly, because they don't want to see him in a bad light. And I'm like, in these situations, they're not doing it because they hate like Africans.
Yeah.
And they want, like, it's strictly business.
Yeah. It was
at this point.
Normal business.
Yeah.
Shit.
He was like, because everybody, like, at this point, he was just like, this is what you got to do to make money. So this is what I'm going to do. So his morals were like, but.
Sounded like a cat.
I know. I get really good at it because I talk to my cat like that. She responds. So, you know, I've done it very well. So for the merchants, Lafitte had a bit of a side hustle going on.
Oh. So
to many people, he was called different names. Some called him a smuggler, others called him a privateer, and of course the name of pirate. There is that occasional name of patriot, but that was only for a short time that I'll go over.
Once in a while.
Yeah. So his privateer name came from him working with the government of Cartagena, modern-day Colombia, and requested for Lafitte and his men to sabotage Spanish commerce vessels. It was to help them get their rightful independence from Spain by ransacking these ships and taking all of their shit. So then when they were fighting with Spain, when modern-day Colombia was fighting with Spain, if you're not having any of your goods coming in to help with your soldiers, they're going to die out eventually because they're not getting those goods coming in.
Yeah.
So Lafitte was like, I can help out. So in this agreement, Lafitte would keep any of the goods he would get from the vessels that he would pick up, and then he would head right back to his living quarters in Barataria, where he would then conduct his smuggling business.
Wow.
This dude,
that's a lot.
Very savvy in the business realm. So Barataria Bay was a perfect location for the job Lafitte was conducting. This was kind of like when you think of like the South, you think of like the bayous and the swamps and like the islands that are around there. That's where like Barataria Bay was. So it was kind of hidden.
Okay.
And it wasn't too far from New Orleans either, but enough to like not get the attention from like New Orleans. Yeah. For a time being. So he was very smart with his location for his headquarters. So where their base was, it was protected by southern islands and the bayous that were deep enough for the ships to leave towards the sea without being caught, but shallow enough that larger ships could not follow because they would just get docked. Okay. To the ground. Yeah. So they figured this all out. So I don't think the ships that they were sailing on were very large, but the bigger like cargo ships and Navy ships, they couldn't really follow.
Yeah.
So they had to go for the smaller vessels to get to where he was located. So very smart about that. So they had a good system going and quite the team with them to make it happen. The men that were working with the Lafitte brothers were called the Baratarians. So the headquarters of their smuggling operations were on the island of Grantier. It is estimated that Jean and Pierre had up to 1,000 men working for them at one point in time.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were helping out there on the island, on the ships, doing everything. Like, they had a legit business going on.
Damn.
Yeah. I'm like, how did I not know? How did they not teach about this guy?
Right? I want to learn more about pirates.
So,
We're not pirates.
So these men would help on the ships in the sea, capturing commerce vessels and the cargo, as well as picking up the slaves and bringing them back to the island. The men that worked for the Lafitte brothers were from all over. It is also known that they would have free men and runaway slaves working from them.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's where it I'm like, I don't think they were probably respected all that much, but I mean, you can see more of the business side of him, why he was doing the slave trade.
Yeah,
because,
he just cares about the business.
Well, you make so much fucking money out of it.
Right.
Especially when it's like highly illegal.
Yeah.
You were going to do everything in your willpower to do that. Because I think slave trade was still a thing in the United States. You just couldn't import them from Africa anymore. So pretty much just the getting them to the U.S. was what he was doing illegally. But I believe the selling was still...
It's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Literally. So... On the island were warehouses for goods they obtained and would sell to merchants. They also held auctions for the goods and the selling of slaves. There was a whole system going on and they were getting away with it. It was absolutely phenomenal of how they were. It blows my mind. But as they were becoming bigger on the seas and in New Orleans, this started to gain attention from the government officials. They're like, who are these guys and what are they doing and why are they not following the law? Why aren't they following authority?
Oh, classic.
So because the government of Cartagena was not seen as legitimate by the U.S. officials, they're like, it's just a revolution group. Like, they're not legit. They saw Lafitte and his men not as privateers helping the independence from the Spaniards, but as pirates pillaging ships and breaking the law.
Oh.
I'm like, it has nothing to do with you. But then again, it does, because then they're smuggling these goods in.
There's a lot going on.
There really is. They don't give a fuck. So it would start to occur more with that custom officials would know of Jean and Pierre. They're like, oh God, these guys. And started to get serious about capturing the two. Oh yeah. It was starting to become like a game of cat and mouse between like all of them. Anytime that the custom officials would have Pierre or Jean, they would somehow find their way escaping and retreating back to Grantier. Like they would just, at one point, I believe Pierre got arrested and they had him in like the holding cell, and then like by nightfall he just poofed. It was gone. He got out.
Oh my gosh.
It's just like, obviously you're doing a really shit job, or like he has really good connections.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Interesting.
Yeah. So at this time, war would break out and the War of 1812 would begin.
Oh yeah.
The British knew of Jean Lafitte and the annoyance he was causing for the United States officials and the custom officials. They're like, they thought they could use him in their favor, because British were getting real pissed at the United States, and they're like, we got to find a way in. And with this whole just cat and mouse game going on with Jean and Pierre, the British Navy were like, maybe we can use him for our benefit, because like he obviously doesn't give two fucks about the United States government, and he just keeps doing whatever he wants. Maybe we can convince him to help us and to like help him out, to be like, oh, we can like really get on your side. We can make all this importing and stuff. Like, we can make it worth your while. It would be in September of 1814 that Lafitte would be approached by British officers on fighting against America. They promised that if he helped with the assistance of getting into New Orleans so they could surprise attack, they would provide him with great reward. They promised him $30,000 a position as captain in their British Navy, and that his previous crimes would be wiped clean.
What? That's a lot.
This is a pretty good promise.
Yeah, damn.
I'm surprised he went against it.
Right?
I could not find the exact reason why he said no, but I have my assumptions. He did not like the Embargo Act as it removed trading that is important for any country. So I think that was like a huge why I would say like, oh, maybe he should have, but
yeah,
it didn't help either that the government was trying to arrest him at all costs. But I think because he had a good system going, he was in a really prime location because you had the West Indies, Latin America, Central America. You had a good grasp, and I honestly don't think he gave two flying fucks about joining the British Navy. He was like, no, I like what I'm doing.
I'd rather not.
No, and he was like getting away with everything, so he was like, why would I stop now?
Yeah.
So Jean told the British that he would think on it, and then he proceeded to turn around and write a letter personally to Governor Claiborne of Louisiana. In this letter, Lafitte would go on to share that what the British were planning to do with the invading of New Orleans, and them approaching him to be like, hey, can you go against your country to do this? He then went on to state that he would offer his assistance to the defense if the British were to invade as well, and he had a whole island of weapons to use, but he would only do so if his smuggling charges would be pardoned and everybody else's. So he was like, I can help you out if you pardon me. We can get this whole thing just wiped clean. Like, we can defeat the British. Now, Claiborne was actually pretty accepting. He was like, yeah, like, that seems pretty good. But the rest of the Louisiana officials did not feel so accepting of Lafitte's purposes or proposal. They were like, this is a joke. And they decided to continue their plan to just not listen to him and just actually go against him further and plan an attack on Jean Lafitte's headquarters.
Oh, shit.
Because they were trying to get this guy out of their system because they had the war to worry about. And they're like, this guy is just going to keep doing whatever he wants. And then I bet they had that like little of like, well, what if he does end up joining them because we told him no? Like, let's just get rid of him altogether.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
that's crazy.
That's the United States. Woo! So the American Navy would progress on their plan, and Lafitte's Grand Tier Island headquarters would end up being destroyed along with another attack from the British Navy. So his entire island that he had his headquarters just wiped.
Wow.
Yeah. It wouldn't be until early 1815 that, out of all people, General Andrew Jackson, because he was not president at this point in time, would approach back to Lafitte's offer, seeing it as more legit than what they previously thought. At first, he was like, he was hesitant at first, as he did not know if Jean and his Baratarian men would turn on them or be loyal. But he decided that he needed them. At first, he freaking hated Jean Lafitte. But then by the end of, like, after, I guess, working with him, they actually became pretty close.
Interesting.
Like, what the hell? So,
wow.
The Baratarians and Jean Lafitte were some of the best gunners and knew the terrain of the area so well that they would have a definite lead off of the British. So as soon as they were offered, they're like, yeah, we'll go with your offer. Like, you can be pardoned, just fight with us. And he was like, okay, I got some of the best gunners out here. We'll take them down. Also, I know this area like the back of my hand. I got you. And of course, like, Andrew Jackson was like, oh my God, yes.
That's so nice.
That's so nice. And so Jean Lafitte and the Baratarians would help during the Battle of New Orleans on January 8th, 1815. Because of their help, they would defeat the British and keep New Orleans protected, and they would be seen as patriots for the United States for this brief time.
Of course.
And of course, they have like pictures and stuff of him just looking so like proper and whatever. And a lot of the pictures too that I saw, they made him look like a flat out pirate. And I'm like,
Give him an eye patch.
But the thing is that it was the 1800s, like early 1800s at this point, where like that classic pirate look hasn't existed for like 200 years.
Yeah.
So it was completely different. But of course, when you think of pirates, you think of like the 1600, 1700 pirates.
Yeah.
Like this was something completely different at this point. So he was just wearing like a coat.
A coat? That's it?
He was like wearing like the whole British or like American army outfit and stuff like that. I don't know.
It only takes a coat to look like a pirate.
Literally. He didn't have the feather hat.
Oh, dang it. No eye patch, no feather hat. What's the point?
No peg leg. So after the battle, Lafitte was sure this time around that he could obtain the pardon that he offered originally. So while Jean would go off inland to D.C. and Philadelphia, Pierre and the men would return to Grand Tier to see if they could salvage anything from the island. Newsflash, no, they couldn't.
Spoiler alert.
So Jean would go to President James Madison and would be granted for their efforts that he and his men would be pardoned from their crimes against the United States. So they were kind of clean cut, ready to go, whatever. And when he returned back to Louisiana, it came to realization that what they had going on in New Orleans was no longer going to work in their favor.
Oh.
Everybody knew of them, especially the government officials. And of course, like, they were still going to keep their eye on him.
Yeah.
And so on returning back in 1816, Pierre approached him. He was like, hey, I've accepted an offer from the Spanish government to be a spy from them. You want to tag along? And Pierre and Jean was like, sure, why not? Let's get out of here. So their job was to map out the Texas coast as the Spanish were planning to invade Texas. So this was like the Spanish, I think the Spanish-American War.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Texas was like a huge part of it because it was still like kind of like Spanish
part
Texas.
Of it, yeah.
Yeah, it was like the whole borders and everything.
Complicated time of Texas.
Literally. Classic Texas.
If you know, you know.
Mm-hmm. So Lafitte would leave New Orleans and begin his new adventure out towards Galveston, Texas. So during his time in Galveston, Lafitte saw possibility. Jean and Pierre would patrol the Gulf and exploited naval routes for everyone to know.
Oh, okay.
So they would see any routes that like the Navy would go through.
Wow.
And just exploit them. Be like, hey, guys, hey, Spain, like, this is where they're going to be. Enjoy with that, which you have.
Dang.
Yeah, so they were savage. So doing his job for the Spanish government and returning, he would return back to New Orleans. But it was not soon after that the Lafitte brothers decided to take their business to Galveston. They're like, everybody knows us here in New Orleans. Texas is having a moment. We should be safe there for the time being. So in September of 1817, Lafitte would begin his restart of smuggling of goods. So his headquarters would be on Galveston Island, and he would stay on this island and conducted his smuggling business until 1820. So for a good 3 years, he had it going. So with the American government finding out that Jean and his brother were back out there in their smuggling business, this time in Texas and working with Spain, they were determined to end Lafitte. They're like, what the hell? He was supposed to be that patriot figure of like going from smuggler to patriot to really become an American citizen. And here he is doing the same exact thing that he was doing before.
Oh my God.
He's not going to learn.
He wore many hats, but not a pirate one. Not a feather one.
Not a feather one. So they were very pissed. And I feel like they felt more betrayed than anything. Like, I'm sure Andrew Jackson was like, how dare he?
Come on, bro. I thought we had a connection.
Literally, I gave you everything. I told you my darkest secrets. You must pay.
I trusted you at our sleepovers.
Oh, God. So they were determined to end this man.
Of course.
Brother. So Lafitte's village he would create would be burned down. Like, it doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And the Lafitte brothers were once again on the run from the U.S. Navy. And from there, they would disappear into the wind.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. This mystery of them just falling off anyone's radar leaves many to suspect what could have happened.
It's like Roanoke.
Literally.
Except people. Well, I mean, that was people too. But...
So many questioned, did they return to New Orleans and end their days quietly there? Because they just didn't want to be known. Did they stay in Texas? Did they go to Mexico? Did they go anywhere in the West Indies? Like, it's just...
They're just left.
Yeah.
They're cowboys.
I would like to hope.
Yeah.
They go from pirates to cowboys. Oh my God. Oh, and they go to, what if they were like bandits, like the Western bandits?
Oh shit, yeah.
Oh shit, the new like Billy the Kid.
That'd be iconic.
That would be iconic. I hope that's what happened. So there has been much speculation over the years, yet none are definitive on where Jean, and Pierre died. But even though they disappeared in history, their legend lives on.
Yes.
So their legend even developed further than what they did for the U.S. in their smuggling business. So a story started to develop that while trying to avoid the U.S. Navy going around the coast and stuff of Texas and New Orleans, they decided they needed to hide their treasure that they had. Because, you know, every pirate has their treasure.
Of course.
So along the Gulf Coast, it is said that Jean Lafitte would hide his treasure. And since then, many have tried to search for his lost treasure.
Oh.
This is a legit thing people do.
Searching for treasure?
Yeah, that was the whole episode for Expedition Unknown, where like Josh Gates would go around to like different people who were trying to find the treasure, because some thought it was in Galveston or in the Texas area, while others thought it was in New Orleans.
BRB getting that job. Go look for treasure all day.
Oh God. Just come up with nothing in the end, because they probably buried us somewhere in the West Indies or some shit. Maybe Mexico. So Jean Lafitte over the years has become a massive historical figure for New Orleans, and the people love his story because they don't know about his slave trade operations, but we're gonna
just pretend that doesn't exist.
His recognition has grown to the point where there is a yearly festival.
What?
This festival is in Lake Charles and is called Contraband Days.
Oh my God.
They do skits on Jean and his life, and over a week of commemorating the legend of Jean Lafitte.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I kind of want that to happen to me. Everyone would do skits about me.
It was later on that Jean Lafitte and his impact would continue when in 1966, Louisiana would authorize a state park to be established in the Barataria Preserve and in his name. Also, it was the location of Lafitte's iconic smuggling area.
Oh, nice.
It was later in 1978 that Congress would go on to create the Jean Lafitte National Historical Park and Preserve. So there's technically a national park off this guy.
So he covered another national park.
Literally. So Jean Lafitte and his wild actions have made an imprint on the people of New Orleans all the way to Texas. His legend will live forever on, and his smuggling businesses to his random help in the War of 1812. If you are determined and curious enough to follow the legend, there is still treasure out there waiting to be found and to uncover more on this mysterious figure in history.
Let's go look for the treasure.
Oh my God.
Go to New Orleans, start digging.
There is a map, a supposed map of where he has his buried treasure.
Oh.
But no one has found it, so.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah.
He did a lot of things.
I've been thinking about covering him for a bit, and then when I actually watched the full episode, I was like, well, shit.
It's time.
Dude had some high importance in both Texas and New Orleans.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Yeah.
Is he a pirate? Dun, dun, dun.
Or a patriot.
Yeah.
Or a smuggler. Or
He's
a
so many
privateer.
things.
Literally.
Damn, he's got a good resume.
He's a jack of all trades.
But no eye patch.
No eye patch. Oh God, where can you find us?
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at History of the Podcast, and you can email us at historyofthepodcast@gmail.com. Just want to say thank you so much for listening.
We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it so much, and y'all are the bomb diggity.
Oh yeah, let us know who's your favorite pirate.
Oh.
If you know of any.
Jack Sparrow. All right, on that note.
We'll catch you next week for a nice, special, lighthearted episode.
Yeah, so it'll be a fun one. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, so we'll see you next week.
Ahoy!
Bye.